Remember when Gotham got darker, stranger, and more gothic than any Batman film had tried before? Michael Keaton under the cowl, Michelle Pfeiffer in stitched latex, Danny DeVito's black bile. Today, we're counting down 20 weird facts you never knew about Batman Returns. Number 20. The moment the Warner Bros. Logo fades into a snow-blanketed, impossibly gothic Gotham, you know you are watching something more personal than a franchise sequel. The whole film breathes like a director operating without a safety net. Here is the thing, Tim Burton very nearly did not come back at all, and he told the press so openly at the time. Burton publicly dismissed sequel talk in 1989 interviews and walked off to direct Edward Scissorhands at 20th Century Fox instead. Warner Bros. Lured him back by demoting original Batman producers John Peters and Peter Guber to executive producer titles only. Burton's contract reportedly stipulated that Peters could not set foot on the set during production. Burton told Empire that the original film was a little boring at times and that he needed total creative control to return. The studio agreed because they needed him more than he needed them. Producer Denise Di came aboard as Burton's day-to-day ally on set. That single concession reshaped every creative decision that followed. Without it, there is no Pfeiffer Catwoman, no Sewer Penguin, no Snow Globe Gotham, and no McDonald's Revolt. Every frame of the finished film signals a director given permission to go further than any studio blockbuster had previously allowed. The man under the cowl had his own demands before he would agree to put the suit on again. Number 19. Think about how little Batman actually says in this film. Bruce Wayne broods in the dark of Wayne Manor, staring at the bat signal with almost no lines at all. That stillness is one of the most memorable qualities of Michael Keaton's performance in this sequel. It was entirely his own idea. Keaton was not contractually locked in for a sequel after the first Batman and had to be negotiated back, reportedly for around $10 million per contemporary Variety and Hollywood Reporter coverage. Once he signed, he personally went through the script and asked for massive chunks of Batman's dialogue to be removed. Screenwriter Daniel Waters told The Hollywood Reporter, "When I saw the final film, I realized he was exactly right." Keaton's instinct was simple. The suit should do the acting, not the lines. He understood the character's power came from silence and physicality, not from speeches. That discipline was entirely self-imposed. Keaton later turned down a reported $15 million for Batman Forever because, in his words on CBS Sunday Morning, the script sucked. His loyalty was to Tim Burton and to the version of the character they had built together. Every pause in the finished film is a choice, not a gap. While Keaton was negotiating his return, the most coveted female role in Hollywood was already promised to someone else entirely. Number 18. Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman is one of the defining performances in superhero cinema. The rooftop entrance, the whip, the stitched-together latex catching moonlight, it all feels inevitable, like there was never anyone else who could have played the role. Turns out, there was someone else first, and she was already deep into prep when everything changed. Annette Bening had been cast, body scanned for the costume mold, and was well into physical preparation before exiting the project. Bening told the Happy Sad Confused podcast, "They did a whole body cast in those days, and then I had to call Tim Burton and say I'm having a baby." She was pregnant with her first child with Warren Beatty. The casting swap has a stranger backstory still. Pfeiffer had originally been attached to Beatty's Bugsy and dropped out, with Bening stepping in, meeting Beatty on that set, and ultimately costing Pfeiffer one role while handing her another. Pfeiffer was paid $3 million for Batman Returns, per a June 14, 1992 Los Angeles Times report. The costume had been molded to Bening's body. Pfeiffer wore a version built for someone else's frame. Bening's exit also forced a complete recasting on a production with a locked start date. And Bening was not the only actress who tried to claim this role, though the next attempt was considerably more dramatic. Number 17. The transformation sequence in Selina Kyle's apartment, where she destroys her old self and stitches together a new identity out of scraps, is one of the most psychologically rich scenes in any superhero film. Multiple actresses desperately wanted this character. One of them went to quite extraordinary lengths to publicly prove it, and the entertainment industry never quite forgave her for the attempt. Sean Young had been cast as Vicky Vale in the original Batman 1989 before breaking her collarbone on set. When Batman Returns went into development, she showed up at Warner Bros. in a homemade Catwoman costume demanding an audition. Per TCM and Contemporary Trade reporting, she also appeared in costume on The Joan Rivers Show and Entertainment Tonight, publicly campaigning for the part. Burton reportedly hid under his desk. Producer Mark Canton and Michael Keaton briefly agreed to meet with her. Young later told David Letterman she was simply ready to pay my dues, but the industry read the campaign very differently, and her shot at the role evaporated immediately. The episode underscored how fiercely coveted the role was and how much pressure the production was already carrying. Pfeiffer's performance carries the weight of how badly other actresses wanted that suit. And Burton had an equally unexpected first choice for the film's other major villain, one the studio refused to even consider. Number 16. Danny DeVito's Penguin is one of the most genuinely disturbing villain performances in blockbuster history. The beak, the black bile, the flipper fingers, the grief of an abandoned child wearing a monster's face, it is completely unlike anything the character had ever been in comics or animation before. That reinvention only happened because Burton's original first choice was vetoed before any other name was seriously considered. Burton's instinct was Marlon Brando. Both Warner Bros. And Batman co-creator Bob Kane were, per Turner Classic Movies production notes, most vehemently against the idea. The studio pushed Dustin Hoffman instead. Christopher Lloyd, Robert De Niro, John Goodman, and Bob Hoskins were all reportedly discussed at length before DeVito entered the picture. Jack Nicholson personally encouraged DeVito to take the part. Burton sealed the deal by handing DeVito a painting captioned, "My name is Jimmy, but my friends call me the hideous Penguin Boy." DeVito told The Hollywood Reporter he still carries it with him to this day. The role was rewritten as a deformed human-bird hybrid, specifically because Burton found the original comic Penguin just this guy with a cigarette and a top hat. That casting chain produced the performance audiences remember. DeVito's tragic animalistic penguin only exists because Brando was vetoed and Hoffman was passed over. Burton's third villain came with his own deeply unexpected casting story behind him. Number 15. Max Schreck's delivery of "Bruce Wayne, why are you dressed up like Batman?" is one of those line readings that could only have come from one human being alive. Bone dry, precisely timed, completely unafraid, it is Christopher Walken at his most glacially menacing. The strange part is that Tim Burton was reluctant to cast him at all. Casting director Marion Doherty has said Burton was uncomfortable with the idea because "that man scares the hell out of me." The original first choice for Shrek was David Bowie, who declined due to scheduling conflicts with David Lynch's Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. Walken built the character from real-life moguls Sol Hurok and Samuel Goldwyn, and requested cufflinks made from human molars, inspired by Meyer Wolfsheim in the 1974 Great Gatsby. The character's name is a tribute to Max Schreck, the gaunt German actor who played Count Orlok in the 1922 silent horror film Nosferatu, and Walken's physical look was modeled on that same vampire aesthetic. He also improvised on set, reportedly suggesting the working power plant blueprint that became a physical prop. The white-streaked hair and rigid posture are deliberate Nosferatu cosplay buried inside a corporate villain. The sets Walken was terrorizing cost an enormous sum to build, and they were constructed entirely from scratch because the studio's original plan had collapsed entirely. Number 14. The Gotham City of Batman Returns has a compressed, almost hallucinatory verticality. Every building looms. Every plaza feels impossibly large and impossibly intimate, simultaneously. Production designer Bo Welch built that world entirely from scratch, because the sets that were supposed to be reused had quietly become impossible to use. After Batman, 1989, Warner Bros. Paid roughly $2 million to acquire Anton Furst's original Gotham sets at Pinewood Studios in England, and reportedly spent around $250,000 storing them under 24-hour armed guard, with plans to use them across multiple sequels. They were never opened, not a single panel was ever moved or touched. Burton insisted on shooting in the US, with an American crew arguing the first film had suffered from a British subtext. Original designer Anton Furst died by suicide in November 1991, midway through pre-production, leaving Welch to invent an entirely new Gotham from scratch at Warner Bros. In Burbank, California. Welch's reimagined city occupied up to 8 soundstages, with visual influences drawn from Third Reich neo-fascist architecture and the American precisionist painters Charles Sheeler and Georgia O'Keeffe. The squeezed perspectives and towering facades of the finished film are not recreations of Furst's work. They are Welch's original vision, built under conditions of grief and severe time pressure. One of those soundstages had to be refrigerated around the clock for some very famous guests. Number 13. The Arctic world layer sequence is one of the most visually ambitious set pieces in any Batman film. The icy island, the 500,000-gallon water tank, the army of waddling emperors surrounding Oswald as he plots the city's downfall. It all looks completely surreal, which makes sense because the logistics behind it were equally surreal. Real emperor, black-footed, and king penguins were flown in from a Cotswolds bird sanctuary aboard a refrigerated cargo plane. American Humane Association records confirm the birds received a 24-hour guard, 2 temperature-controlled trailers, and an outdoor filtered pool. One newspaper contemporary with the production reported the refrigeration bill alone totaled $1 million. Stan Winston's studio built 30 animatronic penguins and dressed 40 little people in penguin suits to fill out the army. At any given moment in the climax, live birds, animatronics, costume performers, and early CGI share the same frame. Christopher Walken told reporters the live emperors were very docile and sweet. They would walk up to you and you could pet them like a cat. Danny DeVito stayed comfortable because his insulating padding kept him warm. Everyone else was frozen solid. PETA still protested the production despite the extensive care measures. The Penguin Army scene is a taxonomy puzzle: live, animatronic, costumed, and digital, all indistinguishable in motion. While the birds were comfortable, the film's leading lady was actively suffocating on another soundstage. Number 12. The Catwoman costume is one of the most iconic pieces of film design in cinema history. The whip, the rooftop silhouette, the stitched latex catching moonlight, every image is burned into the cultural memory of an entire generation. What most people do not know is that wearing it was a genuine physical ordeal. The suit was built from latex rubber over Pfeiffer's body cast. She was powdered with talcum, sealed inside, then painted with thick silicone to create the wet sheen. Costume designer Mary Vogt told Another magazine that roughly 40 suits were made, because once latex rips, the piece is finished. Pfeiffer told The Hollywood Reporter, "They had to powder me down, help me inside, and then vacuum pack the suit." She told Entertainment Tonight in 1992, "My mask was smashing my face, and I couldn't hear, and it was cutting off my vocal cords, and I couldn't really breathe in the corset. I'm really unhappy. I can't act." Tim Burton's instruction was to make the costume look like a calico cat's stitches starting to come apart, echoing Selena Kyle's fractured mental state. Pfeiffer also trained 4 hours daily in kickboxing and whip work with weapons consultant Anthony DeLongis and stunt double Kathy Long, managing to knock 4 mannequin heads off in one unedited take. Every time she purrs on screen, she is conserving oxygen. Her co-star, meanwhile, spent 4.5 hours getting into his face before a single scene could begin. Number 11. Danny DeVito's Penguin is so physically complete that it is easy to forget there is a human performance underneath all of it. The beak nose, the black bile drooling down the chin, the flipper fingers gripping the poison-tipped umbrella, the whole construction is seamless. Getting it that way required a daily ritual that would exhaust most performers before a single camera rolled. Stan Winston's studio key artists Shane Mahan and John Rosengrant studied DeVito's actual pore structure so that his expressions would still read through the appliances. The silicone bodysuit alone weighed roughly 100 pounds. DeVito told The Hollywood Reporter, "It was 4.5 hours of makeup and getting into the costume. We got it down to 3 hours by the end of the shoot. I had pounds and pounds of face prosthetics and body padding." The infamous black mouth fluid was a homemade concoction of mouthwash mixed with red and green food coloring. Burton told Empire, "No one would talk to Danny on the set because he scared everybody." Stan Winston himself said, "I was not talking to Danny DeVito. I mean, the Penguin was there and he was scary." DeVito stayed in character between every take for the entire production. The transformation was total enough that the performance became inseparable from the makeup. Every flipper finger gesture is real glued on rubber. DeVito ate, improvised, and terrorized his entire cast through them for 6 months straight. All right, we're at the halfway mark and things are about to get even wilder. Before we hit the top 10, I want to hear from you. What's your favorite Batman Returns moment? Drop it in the comments, and if you're enjoying this, smash that like button and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. Number 10. Penguin biting a man's nose, kidnapping the mayor's baby, plotting to drown Gotham's firstborn sons in toxic sludge. None of that is exactly Happy Meal territory. But McDonald's had signed on as a promotional partner before seeing the finished film, converting 9,000 restaurants into Gotham City branding complete with cups, bat frisbee lids, and kids' meal toys. Burton told Yahoo Entertainment in 2014, "I think I upset McDonald's. They asked, 'What's that black stuff coming out of the penguin's mouth?' We can't sell Happy Meals with that." The Christian-based Dove Foundation publicly accused McDonald's of having no conscience. Contemporary Entertainment Weekly reporting from July 10, 1992, quoted Warner Bros., shrugging, "Clearly Batman is not meant for 5-year-olds." The backlash went further than anyone at the studio expected. Burton told Yahoo the fallout directly ended his run on the franchise. The studio just thought it was too weird. They wanted to go with something more child or family-friendly. In other words, they didn't want me to do another one. Joel Schumacher was brought in to direct Batman Forever with an explicit brief to go lighter and more toyetic. A failed fast food promotion ended the most creatively ambitious run in superhero cinema history. And before any of that became public knowledge, the studio had already quietly erased an entire character from the film without telling anyone outside the lot. Number 9, Batman Returns has a full rogues gallery: Penguin, Catwoman, Max Schreck, and the Shadow of Gotham itself. What it does not have is Robin. That absence was not always the plan. At one point, Robin had been cast, costumed, given an action figure, and signed to a multi-picture contract. Marlon Wayans was hired to play a character written as the Kid, a young garage mechanic with an R on his uniform. Full costumes were built, sets were designed, and Kenner produced an action figure. Wayans told Gizmodo in 2009, "I was actually supposed to play Robin in Batman Returns. I was cast, I was paid, and everything. I still get residual checks." He was reportedly paid $100,000 under a 2-picture contract that would have brought him back for a Burton-directed third film. Daniel Waters has recounted that even Burton began to doubt the character during development. "Tim even thought the R on the uniform was too much," Waters said. In Mark Salisbury's book Burton on Burton, Burton explained that Robin screwed up Batman's loner psychology, and the character was cut before any footage was shot. The scrapped role had an unexpected cultural ripple. DC artists Norm Brayfogle and Neil Adams redesigned Robin's costume for his planned screen debut, producing the black-caped ninja boot version that appeared in Batman issue 457 in 1990 and defined the Tim Drake Robin in comics for years afterward. Number 8. Batman Returns has 3 narrative engines running simultaneously: the Penguin's plot to destroy Gotham's first generation, Catwoman's fractured feminist arc, and Max Schreck's corrupt power plant scheme. They connect, they collide, and they produce a film that feels like 3 very different movies somehow sharing the same snowstorm. That is because 3 very different writers built them. Sam Hamm wrote early drafts that featured a treasure hunt, Harvey Dent becoming Two-Face, and Vicky Vale still present. Burton rejected the approach entirely and brought in Heather's writer Daniel Waters to reinvent the project from scratch. Waters' first draft, by his own admission, would have cost $300 million and take 2 years of our lives to shoot, with the Penguin headquartered in an abandoned World's Fair. Wesley Strick was brought in for an uncredited rewrite in mid-1991. Strick told interviewers, "Warner's wasn't thrilled with the Penguin's plot to kidnap and kill the firstborn sons of Gotham City, which was the master plan I'd come up with." Strick normalized Waters' arch one-liners, expanded Schreck's power plant scheme, and added the firstborn son's plot. Waters retained sole screenplay credit. The film's tonal collisions, where arch one-liners sit beside genuinely grim plot mechanics, are the direct result of 3 writers pulling in 3 directions. Lines like "mistletoe can be deadly if you eat it" exist alongside the kidnapping of a mayor's infant. Even the score that holds all of it together almost never got made. Number 7. The score of Batman Returns is one of the great elements of the film. The rolling, choir-laden penguin theme, the lush Catwoman cue, the Bat fanfare returning over the opening Warner Bros. Logo. It all sounds inevitable in retrospect. The reality is that Danny Elfman was deeply unhappy after the first film, and nearly did not come back. Original Batman producers John Peters and Peter Guber had forced Prince's pop songs into Elfman's 1989 score over his objections. Elfman told Yahoo Entertainment, "I was willing to walk away from the film rather than compromise what I knew should be the sound of the film." He initially refused Batman Returns, agreeing only after Burton fought to keep the sequel entirely pop-free. Then, midway through post-production, the 2 men fell into a serious personal rift. Elfman was simultaneously working on Batman Returns and The Nightmare Before Christmas under extreme schedule pressure, with Burton forced to deliver a director's cut to studio executives just 4 weeks after principal photography wrapped. Elfman told The Companion in 2021, I felt like I'd lost a brother. They did not speak again for several years, eventually reconciling on Mars Attacks. Listen for how the Penguin's funeral motif rhymes with the original 1989 Bat theme. That is Elfman's last compositional gesture to Burton before they stopped speaking. And while all of that was happening in the editing room, the film's star was doing something on camera that made even the director forget every other problem. Number 6. There is a moment in Batman Returns where Catwoman coos at a caged canary, reaches in, and bites down with the bird flapping inside her teeth. It plays like an effect. It is not an effect. There is no CGI, no animatronic, no hidden mechanism. Michelle Pfeiffer put a living bird in her mouth and held it there while the camera rolled. Burton told The Hollywood Reporter in 2017 she had a live bird in her mouth while the camera was rolling. It was 4 or 5 seconds, and then she let it fly out. It was before CG, it was before digital. It was so quick, it seems like it was an effect. Pfeiffer later told Variety, "I look back and say, what was I thinking? I think Tim likes to torture me a bit. It's like a little brother kind of thing." The rest of Pfeiffer's physical preparation was equally extreme. She trained 4 hours daily in kickboxing and whip work with weapons consultant Anthony DeLongis, and stunt double Kathy Long managed to knock 4 mannequin heads off in one unedited whip take and accidentally cut her trainer's face on the very first day of practice. That single canary take is the most unhinged piece of physical acting in any 1990s superhero film, and it is entirely real. Beneath all that performance, Burton was running out of time to finish the movie. Number 5. The final act of Batman Returns arrives with a kinetic roughness that the rest of the film does not quite have. Penguin's Rocket Penguin Army, the Bat-Missile escape, the flooding of the Arctic world lair. These sequences feel like brilliant ideas slightly ahead of the technology and the time available to realize them. That is not an accident. Per the AFI catalog citing people from May 11th, 1992, there would be no time for test screenings because Burton was rushing to finish the film in time for its June 19th, 1992 release. He had to present a director's cut to studio executives just 4 weeks after principal photography wrapped in February 1992, less than half his usual editing window. Editor Chris Lebenzon was cutting under conditions where some shots were still being conceived weeks before the release date. The visual effects shot list grew to roughly 115 shots handled across 6 houses, including Stan Winston Studio and Matt World Digital. Some of the film's most ambitious concepts were scaled back under time pressure. The Penguin's original World's Fair headquarters became the Arctic World Lair. The pressure is also the direct cause of the Burton-Elfman rift. The roughness of the final act is a director honoring his vision with half the time he needed. And the very last image of the film was not part of his vision at all. Number 4. The final image of Batman Returns is Catwoman's cowl rising into frame against a snow-swept Gotham skyline, with the bat signal burning in the clouds above her. It is one of the most iconic closing images in superhero cinema, ambiguous, melancholy, and completely unforgettable. It is also not in Daniel Waters' shooting script, was added $250,000, and was filmed without Michelle Pfeiffer. The original ending had Bruce and Alfred nearly hitting Selina's black cat in the road, with Bruce quietly taking the animal home and the fate of Catwoman left entirely ambiguous. Per the Shadows of the Bat documentary on the 2005 special edition DVD, the rooftop shot was added after test audiences responded enthusiastically to Pfeiffer. A body double was used because Pfeiffer was unavailable by that point in the schedule. The commercial motivation was a planned Pfeiffer-led Catwoman spin-off. Warner Bros. Wanted the ending to set it up. Daniel Waters eventually wrote a version of that spin-off, which was abandoned, and the concept eventually became the 2004 Halle Berry film with an entirely different character and premise. One of the most quoted final images in the genre, a $250,000 add-on featuring someone else's silhouette. Study the body double's posture against Pfeiffer's usual feline stillness, and you can just barely see the difference. Even the hero's suit went through a quiet upgrade that almost nobody discusses. Number 3. The Batman of Batman Returns looks subtly different from his 1989 counterpart. The cowl is slimmer, the chest logo is flatter, and the overall silhouette has a cleaner, almost Art Deco quality. These were deliberate design decisions, and they came with one very practical addition that Keaton requested personally. Costume designers Bob Ringwood and Mary Vogt rebuilt the musculature with a streamlined modern silhouette modeled on mid-century toasters and vacuum cleaners. At Keaton's specific request, a zipper was added to the groin of the suit's undergarments so he could use the bathroom between takes without requiring a full costume change. Director Andy Muschietti later told Entertainment Weekly that Keaton described the original suit as impossible to work in, he couldn't move his neck or anything. The Batmobile received its own upgrade. The paint switched from matte to gloss to match the cleaner sequel aesthetic. The Bat-Missile mode, where the car's panels jettison around a narrow escape pod during the chase sequence, was added via early CGI as a cheaper alternative to storyboards that had originally shown the vehicle riding up the sides of buildings. Every design choice was Tim Burton and Bo Welch pushing harder into their own aesthetic while solving the physical problems that had plagued the cast for 3 years. And behind every single one of those choices, the studio was quietly preparing to remove the director who made them. Number 2. The closing Warner Bros. Shield of Batman Returns carries a weight that only makes sense in hindsight. This was the last Tim Burton Batman film ever made. The studio did not announce that. They simply stopped asking him back while quietly telling the press exactly why. Batman Returns grossed $266,824,291 worldwide on an $80 million budget, a significant profit, but $144 million less than the original. By July 1992, anonymous Warner Bros. Executives were telling reporters the film was too dark and not a lot of fun, per The Hollywood Reporter and contemporary trade coverage. Thousands of complaint letters had arrived from parents despite the PG-13 rating, and the McDonald's backlash amplified every internal concern. Burton told Yahoo and Empire that he did not feel fired so much as quietly disinvited. He stayed on as a producer for Batman Forever, while Joel Schumacher took the director's chair with an explicit brief to make Gotham lighter and family-friendly. Michael Keaton walked away entirely when the new script did not impress him. This is the moment the director-driven dark, strange superhero film was rolled back in favor of toyetic spectacle. Bruce Wayne's last quiet ride through Gotham with Alfred plays now like a farewell, because that is exactly what it was. And despite the studio's best efforts, the film they called too weird quietly built the next 30 years of superhero cinema. Number 1. Keaton silhouetted against Gotham, Pfeiffer backflipping off a rooftop, DeVito's funeral procession of waddling emperors carrying him into the dark water. These images have never left the culture. Despite being branded a commercial disappointment, Batman Returns seeded the next 3 decades of superhero storytelling in ways Warner Bros. Did not anticipate. Warner Bros. Sent Bruce Timm to the Batman Returns, set to sketch DeVito so that the new Batman, the animated series, premiering in autumn 1992, would visually match the film. The DCAU Penguin and Catwoman are essentially Burton characters rendered in cell animation. Per Variety's retrospective coverage, the Burton Batman films are credited with establishing the darker, more serious tone that would later define the modern superhero genre. Pfeiffer's Catwoman influenced every screen Catwoman who followed, from Halle Berry to Anne Hathaway to Zoe Kravitz. DeVito's grotesque, tragic Penguin is the direct ancestor of Colin Farrell's Oz Cobb and HBO's The Penguin series. Burton told the Los Angeles Times that Pfeiffer's performance was one of my favorite performances of anything by anyone in any movie that I've worked on. The film, called Too Dark by a studio full of anonymous executives, became the measuring stick every subsequent Batman story is held against, including the ones designed to correct it. Every brooding, gothic, villain-centered Batman story since 1992 is in direct conversation with this film. That is the real return. Batman Returns is the rare studio blockbuster that doubled down on weirdness instead of safety and was punished commercially before being vindicated culturally. A film shaped by a director who negotiated his own creative freedom, a leading lady vacuum packed into a costume, an actor disappearing under 4 hours of prosthetics, 3 writers pulling the story in 3 directions, a final image added 2 weeks before release without its own star, and a McDonald's promotion that ended a career. Every accident quietly shaped what ended up on screen. If this video surprised you, drop your favorite fact in the comments. Like, subscribe, and share this with someone who loves this movie as much as you do. And as always, meow. We'll see you next time.